Hello dear viewer, you're welcome to our lesson, Primary 4 class. Today we are going to continue our discussion from where we ended last time. We were looking at our topic, that is vegetation in our district, and we talked about the two types of vegetation that take you through the previous lesson. We talked about natural vegetation, we understood the examples in natural vegetation and everything. And then we also talked about planted vegetation. And under planted vegetation, we gave examples like planted grass, we talked of planted flowers, we talked of planted forests, and we also talked about planted crops. And we looked at some of the crops that can fall under that we call planted crops. In this lesson, we pick it from page 14 of our workbooks for us who have them. And like I always say, if you don't have a workbook yet for term 2, primary 4 class, make sure you remind mommy, daddy, so that they get for you one, such that you will be following as we are having a lesson like this. So that page gives us the crops that are grown in our district. Of course, these ones are under what we call planted vegetation. Now, what we need to understand is we are going to begin by defining a crop. What is a crop? How are we going to understand a crop? In the simple way, we shall say a crop is a plant grown for a purpose. As simple as this. A crop is a plant which is grown for a purpose, which means people grow a crop for a purpose. This purpose can be either sale, that is to sell it and they get money, or this crop can be grown for food. These are the reasons as to why people mainly grow crops. There are 4. We are going to be looking at the groups of crops that used to happen to be there. We used to have what we call the food crops. We used to have the food crops, and we could say that food crops, these are the crops which are grown mainly for eating. Crops grown mainly for eating. Of course, they include the crops which are grown for eating, like the sweet potatoes, the cassava, the maize, sorghum, millet, bananas, rice, to mention by a few. So all those that are grown, for eating, are the ones that we termed as food crops. And then we also had cash crops. We also had cash crops, whereby we say cash crops are those crops that are grown for sale. However, we need to note as primary 4 children that as we talk today, all crops are cash crops. All crops are cash crops. So, why do we say all crops are cash crops? The reason is, all the crops, even the ones that were grown for eating, can also be sold. There are 4. We are going to have the groups of cash crops. Groups of cash crops. So we are going to have 2 groups of cash crops. One, we shall have the ones that were originally grown for sale, meaning at first. Remember the other groups that we are talking of, food crops, cash crops. We shall say we shall have what we call traditional cash crops. Now, what are traditional cash crops? We shall say these are crops that were originally meaning at first or formerly they were grown for, originally grown for sale. That is how we are going to understand traditional cash crops. Remember, I've said all crops we have today are cash crops, in that they now fall under two groups. We have the traditional cash crops that we are saying these are the crops that were originally grown for sale, meaning at first they were grown for sale during those days. When we have the examples of these crops, we shall be looking at crops like tea, coffee, sisal, tobacco, vanilla, pyrethrum. For them, they are not eaten directly, they are not eaten, but they are mainly, or they are grown for sale. These were the ones that we were looking at as cash crops. And then we also have the second type of cash crops. This was number one. The second one, we are going to call them non-traditional cash crops. Therefore, we are now going to understand which are these crops that we call the non-traditional cash crops. We shall say that these are the crops, these are crops that were originally grown for eating. We need to get the difference here. They were originally grown for eating, but can also be sold, but can also be sold for income. So that is what we need to note. These are crops that were originally grown for eating. Remember, we had called them food crops. But today, they can also be sold for income. Which means, we are now trying to understand the statement that I mentioned at first, that today all crops can be termed as cash crops. Because when we look at the examples of these crops that were at first grown for eating, but can also, that one makes us to understand that much as they are for eating, they can also be sold for income. I'm not saying they are no longer eaten, therefore they are now grown for income alone. No. They were grown for eating, and that reason remains, but they can also be sold for what? For income. When we look at the examples, we shall have crops like cassava, we shall have crops like beans, maize, sorghum, millet, rice, simsim, ground nuts, to mention but a few. Meaning, these crops can be grown for eating. When we look at this, for example, we look at cassava, you will find that people grow cassava for eating. It is eaten. However, this cassava can also be sold. Someone can say, let me first dry this and I sell it, that I can get money. Or even selling it when it's not yet dry. So, we shall be able to note that these crops can be eaten. At the same time, they can also be sold. Part of them can be sold and someone gets money out of that crop. So that is why we call them also cash crops. They were grown at first for eating, but today they can also, I say this word also carries a lot of meaning there. They can also be grown for what? For eating, for sale. meaning they can be sold and one gets money out of them. Let us look at we have on our page 16, we are given some of the crops together with their products. What we need to note is we have what we call the raw materials got from these crops. We have the products got from these crops. Now, raw materials, we look at items which can be used to make other products. They are items that can be used to make other products, which means that these crops here, when we come to the advantages of these crops, we shall be able to realize that some crops can be used for making other products, meaning for making other things out of them. For example, we have coffee in our first list, and we are saying this can be used for making coffee powder. And then we have tea, which can be used for making tea leaves. So for that, we should be having the raw material, and then we have the product. Like I have said, a raw material is that item used for making a final product. Therefore, when we have here coffee as a crop, and here we are having coffee powder, this one now becomes the product, whereas coffee is a raw material which was used to make that product. Next is we have tea as a crop. We shall have the product, tea leaves, that we can put in hot water and we drink. We take it as tea. That is what we can take. We can take it as break, as maybe evenings, or in the evening or any time, because English says that any time is tea time. And then we have what we call tobacco, a crop. Tobacco, which can be used for making cigarettes. So we need to note all this. Tobacco, we use it for making cigarettes. Next is we have cotton. Cotton as a crop. You will find that this cotton can be used for making clothes, can be used for making cotton wool. Cotton wool. You'll find that this is the one that is always used, like in hospitals, clinics. When you have some wound, they use it, they put some, maybe like spirit, then they clean the wound for dressing the wounds. So that is what we call cotton wool. And then we also have cotton threads. Remember, these ones are now used in the making of clothes. It's called threading. So still, it comes up with, we shall come up with a cloth as we are wearing them. So one of the products from cotton, we have clothes, we have cotton wool, and then we have also the cotton seeds, which can also be used for making oil, cooking oil. We need to be aware of that also. So we shall be able to know that from cotton as a crop, we shall get very many other products. And then when we go to cocoa, we are saying cocoa can be used for making beverages. We have pyrethrum, which is used for making perfumes, which can also be used for making insecticides. Insecticides, these are the chemicals used to kill insects. For example, in your room, you can be having some cockroaches in the house, so you'll find there are those insecticides that mommy, daddy can bring, and they spray such that they can die. Remember, those can be disease carriers. They can make you get a disease. And then we have what we call simsim. Simsim can also be used, and they make cooking oil, just like sunflower. Remember, we have sunflower as a crop. It is missing there. So we can add it, sunflower. The crop called sunflower can also be used for making cooking oil, just like simsim as we have there. And also the oil palm that we are saying, we have put it in bracket kalangala, just to remind you that kalangala is where this oil palm is mainly grown in Uganda. So if a question asks you in your primary 4 class, mention the district in Uganda where oil palm is mainly grown, then of course we have our answer as Kalangala district. And then we shall also be having other crops that they have given us, that we are having in our books. We have sugarcane. Of course, we know very well sugarcane can be used for making sugar. That one we all know. The sugar we put in our tea, as we were saying, that we make. We get the hot water, we get the tea leaves, we get the sugar, we add, we stir, then we start sipping it. So that is the one that comes from the sugarcane, in case we didn't know. And then we have others like maize. Maize can be used for making flour, maize flour, that we can use for now mingling or for making now posho that we eat. So don't say maize is used for making posho. No, it's not posho, but it's maize flour. Is that flour that we can now use and we make a posho from that maize flour that is made from the maize plant. And we have vanilla, which is for spices, and also we will also add cassava, also for making what we call cassava flour, which can be used for making what we locally call kalo. And when we mingle it, we shall be able to enjoy it at home there. And then we have the importance of growing crops. That is where we want to head to. So we are moving to the importance of growing crops. The first one, of course, we need to note when we're introducing our lesson, we say a crop is a plant grown for a purpose. And we say the purpose can either be to eat it or to sell. So we are having already two answers there when it comes to this heading. So we shall say crops are grown for food, or we can say they are grown for eating. There is no problem there. And then secondly, we say crops can also be sold, for income. When we talk about income here, primary for child, we mean money. Don't get confused and lost. And then crop growing provides people with jobs. Crop growing employs people. In other words, one gets a job. It's like someone gets employed there. He has his garden, someone takes care of his garden, weeding his crops, monitoring everything. That is like someone's job now. Of course, we are looking at now the farmers. And then we also talked about these products which are made from some crops. So for that case, we shall be saying crops are used for making other products. Crops are used for making other products. For example, we were talking about sugarcane as a crop which can be used for making sugar. We were talking about cigarettes tobacco as a crop used for making cigarettes. We talked about tea as a crop which we can use for making tea leaves that we can take as tea, chai. And then we had also cotton, that we say cotton can be processed and we end up having clothes like the one I'm wearing here. This is cotton pure. So you will find that this is from the garden, from cotton. You must also be wearing one and you don't know that that cloth or that shirt of yours is from the garden. So we need to appreciate cotton and the farmers who grow them, who grow such crops. And then we continue. We are saying that crop growing can also promote trade. Crop growing promotes trade. Crops grown promote trade. How does crop growing promote trade? You should be able to give a reason as a primary for child. Now, crop growing promotes trade in a way that we have talked about these crops being sold, which means these are things which can be taken to the market and trade takes place, buying and selling. So that is how that one comes in. So if a question is asked to you as a P4 child, why do people grow crops? Please, you have as many answers as possible for you to tell us. You can say people grow crops to get what to eat, that is to get food. People grow crops to sell and they get income or money, I told you. People can grow crops, or maybe people can grow crops, this one might not come that way, but this one you can say people grow crops in order to make other products out of them. But of course, then this one goes back to selling them and they get money. So that is what you need to understand. Now, we need to understand what we call, we are having in our notes what we call floriculture. Floriculture, we are looking at the growing of flowers in an area. And when we look at the flowers, we have on page 18, we are having the group, the flowers grown. We have the rose flower, we had the orchid flower, the lily flower, and we have the Peruvian flower, and very many. And when we look at we also have what we call estate farming, or estate crop, estate growing, estate farming, and estate. Maybe we shall talk about an estate. Here we mean a large piece of land, or is when a single crop is grown on a large piece of land. That's what we call estate farming. The growing of one perennial crop, on a large scale. That is what we mean by estate farming. The growing of one perennial crop on a large scale. Therefore, we need to understand which are these perennial crops that can be grown on a large scale. You find one single crop being grown on a large scale, and these are the perennial crops that take seasons in the garden. For example, of course, now that one gives us what we call plantation crops or estate crops. We also call it plantation crops. Plantation crops. We are looking at the crops that can be grown as in one single crop on a large scale. We have tea, we have tobacco can be grown, we have coffee, oil palm can also be here, and other crops. So these are the crops including cocoa, pyrethrum. Those are the crops that can be grown on a large scale. One perennial crop, even sisal. So maybe we add pyrethrum, cocoa, sisal, and many others. So these crops are grown on a large scale, and you find the garden will be having only one crop. Now, let's look at problems that people face as they grow crops. Problems faced by people. Problems faced by crop farmers. We can also call them crop growers, which means those people who grow crops. Which problems do they face? These people have a lot of problems as they do that activity of growing crops or farming. First problem is we have what we call prolonged sunshine. prolonged sunshine, meaning sometimes they grow their crops and the sun prolongs, or maybe the sun shines for a longer season or for a longer time. That one causes drought, and you find that the crops end up drying in an area. And then the other problem, we have the problem of soil erosion. We have the problem of soil erosion. We have the problem of landslides. This problem of landslides is always takes place in mountainous areas. You find as farmers plant crops on the slopes of the mountain, you find the soil gets washed down with the crops. So a farmer will have serious loss when such occurrences take place. And then we have another problem of lack of enough capital. We can simply call it shortage of capital. Shortage of capital. Here we are meaning the money to invest in the farm. And then we have crop pests. Crop pests and the diseases. These ones move together. Shall have crop pests, or the diseases can attack or can affect the crops, and of course the crops fail to produce good yields. And then we have other problems like floods can also occur due to heavy rains. Floods occur and will end up also washing away the crops in the garden. So this we have on page 18. I want you to add the ones that are missing on your page. We have on your page, we have drought, we have pests and diseases, but you don't have others like landslides. We have also soil erosion. So make sure you are adding some information to your booklet such that you make it nice and enriched. And for that, you will be able to have well-organized notes. Remember, these are the notes that you are going to keep on using for the whole of your primary 5. And they are also good for primary 5, for the whole of your P4. They are also good for your P5, for your P6, and primary 7. So don't just dispose your notes anyhow. Make sure you keep your notes very carefully. And then, having looked at these problems, we also need to understand that which can be the possible solutions to these problems. What should be done such that these people do not face such problems? Solutions. And dear primary 4 child, the solutions in social studies are got from the problems, which means for us to get the solution, we should be able to look at the problem. Because once we identify the problem, then we shall be able to get the answer for it. That is what we call a solution. For example, we have the first problem, drought. How are we going to overcome the problem of drought? Now, as a P4 child, you must be thinking, how can a drought, too much sunshine, prolonged sunshine, the sun shines for a longer time without it raining. So what should be done in such areas? Here now, people can practice what we call afforestation. By practicing afforestation, or we can simply say, if afforestation is disturbing us, we can simply say by planting trees in an area to help in rain formation. Simple as that. Have you seen how we have got the solution to that problem? Planting trees in an area. This is what we call afforestation. We also have what we call reforestation. That is planting trees in an area where trees were cut. So the whole issue remains planting trees. When these trees are planted, remember we must have said even in our primary 3 class that trees help in rain formation. I believe you learned about that. Trees are in an area when it shines, the sun hits the trees. Let me show you what happens. so that we can be able to understand that one very well. Because someone must be wondering, how can trees help to form rain? So we are going to share that diagram from here. So what I'm meaning is, if for example, we have trees, for example, we have a forest, you can give me the name of this forest. You can suggest a name. Maybe we can call it Budongo Forest. I have given it a name. So this is our forest. Of course, a forest has very many trees growing in it. We shall have another tree here. So these are our trees growing. These are the leaves now. Now what happens here is, we have the sun shining here. The sun shines. This is the sun. So what happens is that when the sun shines on these trees, I'm showing you now the light, the sun rays. That is the sun shining, hitting these trees. And due to the continuous hitting of these trees, there is what we call transpiration. Transpiration is a process through which plants lose excess water into the atmosphere in the form of what we call water vapor. Implying that when the sun hits these trees, the trees are going to lose water. Through the leaves, we have the structures on a leaf that we call the stomata. So we have the trees losing the excess water into the atmosphere, and I say this process is what we term as transpiration. Now this excess water in form of vapor will go into the atmosphere, where it will condense to form the clouds. These are now the clouds formed. Of course, we say it will condense. These are clouds that are formed due to the process that we call condensation. And these are the nimbus clouds, we should say, that will eventually result into rainfall. Therefore, because of these trees, this area is now receiving what? Rainfall. And if the garden having the crops around is there, then of course this garden is now going to have the rain, and we shall have managed this problem of drought. So that was about drought. Number 2, we have the problem of soil erosion. How can we address this problem? How can we solve this problem of soil erosion? Now, soil erosion is solved by having proper methods of farming. For example, we have in hilly areas, people are encouraged to build terraces on their farms, and that is what we call terracing. By terracing land. Terracing land. That is enough. We have already addressed the problem of soil erosion. The other problem remaining, we have a problem of landslides. And we said landslides occur in mountainous areas. They don't occur in flat areas or valley areas. Remember, landslides that now washing off the soil. The soil is falling from the top of the mountain as it pours down on the slopes. So what should be done to prevent this problem from happening? People are encouraged to plant trees on those mountains, such that the trees planted can help to get the soil particles together, and therefore the soil will not be washed away. Also, we have what we call contour plowing. By contour plowing, that is growing crops across the mountain, growing crops across, not down, up, down, but across. That is what we call contour plowing. And then we have another problem of shortage of capital. What should be done? People should get loans. By getting loans, let me rub this as we are continuing with our solutions downwards. So we are on this of shortage of capital. People can get loans by getting loans. And when they get loans, it means they will be able to get the money that they can invest or put for the farm activities. Crop pests and diseases. What should be done here? I request you also have the answer for that one. Very simple. What should be done to overcome this problem? Crop pests, we know pests. These are the living organisms that destroy the crops. For example, monkeys are there, the rats are there, and very many others. What should be done? What can be done? We have talked of monkeys putting scarecrows in gardens. For example, a garden of maybe maize, the monkeys can go and attack most of those places that are near mountains where monkeys always stay. So you'll find such people put scarecrows. Or people who grow rice, you find there are these birds that come and eat up the rice in the garden. So what they do, they put a scarecrow, something like a human being, in that when the wind blows, it shakes this scarecrow, and the birds fly away. The birds might think that one is a human being. So such techniques can be used to overcome the problem of pests and diseases, and also spraying these crops using pesticides. That can also help to kill the pesticides and the diseases that can be there. Then we go to the next problem, that is the problem of floods. Of course, floods also occur due to because the area is maybe does not have the trees to help to first bind the soil particles together and the grass. So planting trees still can come to overcome that, and practicing proper methods of farming. Then there is one problem that we did not mention, and I want us to share it, and we shall also get a solution. We have the problem of prices changing. Prices of the goods or the crops when harvested always keep on going down, up, down, up. That is what we call price fluctuation. I don't know whether you have heard me well. We call it price fluctuation. My goodness, I'm writing it here. Price fluctuation. Which means the prices keep on, they are not constant. You find as you are growing your tomatoes right now, when the tomatoes are in the garden, you find they are very expensive in the market, and the farmer will be like, wow, I want by the time I harvest this, I will sell and I'll get a lot of money. But you find sometimes by the time harvesting comes, as the farmer takes these tomatoes to the market, you find the price has gone down. Therefore, this farmer will sell these tomatoes at a very cheaper price. That will be very bad to that farmer. So what should be done here is by setting up constant prices for the produce. So that is another solution. These are now the problems that we are having. Now we are having the solutions on our board that should be done in order to overcome the problem of price fluctuation and the rest of the problems that farmers can be having. We have the uses of vegetation. The uses of vegetation in general, that is on our page 20. We have vegetation can be used as a source of food to both the people, animals, and the birds. And also vegetation provides a habitat, that is a home, for some wild animals that can be hunted. I remember if you watched the previous lesson when we looked at the importance of forests, you will find that this one can have all this happening. So I believe our lesson has been so interesting, and we shall be ending there. I thank you so much for watching it, and I pray we see each other again in the next lesson. May God be with you.